So, because of climate change and because we are still using a huge amount of fossil carbon in generating our energy, we are facing a situation where, to be consistent with our policy goals on controlling climate change, we are going to need to remove some of the carbon that we are likely to put into the atmosphere over the next couple of decades from existing facilities like power plants and our transportation system. Therefore, we need to ask ourselves, what options might there be available to remove carbon dioxide, from the atmosphere or from the ocean, and if we were to do that, where might we be able to secure and safely retain that carbon dioxide for relevant periods climatically. There are a very diverse range of suggestions of places to store carbon, which broadly fall into two categories. The first is to enhance natural components of the carbon cycle, be it, for instance, something like forests, or encouraging greater growth in the oceans or greater uptake of carbon by the physical ocean system. The second is to build on technologies developed within the field of carbon capture and storage, whereby you look to take a concentrated CO2 stream. In carbon capture and storage, this comes from, say, a power plant, but for the purpose of greenhouse gas removal, this might come from burning biomass and capturing the carbon dioxide that's released, or from machines that can artificially scrub carbon dioxide directly out of the atmosphere. And then you would look to inject this concentrated carbon dioxide into deep rock formations, deep underground, where it can be securely held for many millions of years and completely isolated from the carbon cycle. The next question then is how large are all of these different places that we could store carbon? There are large uncertainties in all of these, and a lot of it is still to be researched in detail. The uncertainties are both technical; they are set by what are the limits of, for instance, nutrient systems that might support growing increased vegetation, or the ecosystems that we might rely on to draw down more carbon, but also societal. How would society react? How would it compete with any of these mechanisms, compete with other societal interests? Undertaking global carbon storage at the sort of scale that would make a difference in tackling climate change is going to involve some very, very large operations. For me, I think we're talking about having to remove via a process around a gigaton of carbon for it to be a useful process in the fight against climate change. This inevitably involves doing things at very large scale, involving perhaps a lot of industrial development and other factors. So we need to now analyse all of these in detail to understand what the full life cycle consequences of undertaking this method of greenhouse gas removal or carbon storage might be. For instance, if we were to undertake accelerated weathering, this is where you grind up rocks that react with carbon dioxide, and it's about accelerating the process with which weathering naturally secures carbon from the atmosphere and from the ocean. We would have to understand what the logistical constraints would be of the scale of the mining and rock crushing and distribution operations would be, how we would source the energy that would undertake all of this operation, and what the overall carbon and climatic balance of undertaking such action would be.